Welcome to the show that teaches you the things your parents and teachers are too afraid to. The Helios blog. Today, Londonia. Mohammed Hijab talks about womanism. First and second wave. Guys, it's sketchier than you think.
The reason she's alone is because she's difficult.
Women are not accepting the bare minimum.
Women fuck men they respect.
All the women who say things like, I'm strong, independent, I don't need no man, like, y'all impress me.
Women just gaslight each other and say what they want to hear.
By the way, there's something called the Fawcett Society here in the UK named after her, this woman. She was racist. She didn't mention the lynching. The lynching came from a woman called Rebecca Latimer Felton, who was the first senator of the United States.
Lordy
By the way,
Lord.
Senators are more important than women in the House of Representatives. She was talking about black people being lynched. So this person that they celebrate in America, they celebrate, and I put the reference there, they celebrate her as the first woman senator. She was saying black people should be, how could they get the vote, she was saying. These blacks, these fools, how can you let these blacks have the vote and not us? This is their understanding, because don't forget, black people had the vote before who? Before women did. Black people in America had the vote before women did. And so this woman was saying, how could these blacks have the vote? You should lynch them instead of giving them the vote and not us. So when women in this country and in other places, they associate themselves with this, and 100 years of, I remember just some time ago, 100 years of, enfranchisement and voting and the first wave, and you'll be taught this. They don't tell you that these are colonial racial people, that they were talking about lynching blacks. This is in the historical record. It's not something which it's an open secret, if you like, So there's two or three things we need to understand. Yes, they influenced the discourse, but they did so for privileged purposes. They believed in entitlement. They were entitled women. They weren't talking about women in other countries in the colonies. They weren't talking about in the developing world. They only cared about themselves, to be quite honest with you. And if they didn't care, if it was all a humanitarian and egalitarian ethic, then what about black people that you're talking about lynching? You see, this is a very strong argument if you think about it. And this already, it shows us the colonial nature of feminism, okay? And the racial nature of feminism. It really is a colonial elitist discourse which can be traced back with sources. You'll be surprised that in the 19th century there was something called wife selling. These are some things in the UK that it was difficult for some people to divorce their wives. Very difficult to divorce their wives. All they do, they go and sell them in the market. They used to sell. Now this, by the way, we don't want to be, how people are orientalist towards Muslim narratives, and we don't want to be the same. This was not a law. As far as I know, it's not a law in British statutes, but it was something that was practiced up until the 19th century. So you can see why this would aggravate women. They would actually literally, if you look online and see how wife selling, they would literally be tied up, put this thing on their face and literally like animals, and come and sell my wife and this and that. They had all kinds of practices, by the way. If a woman wanted to get a divorce in 18th century Britain, and she had to prove that her husband was impotent sexually, there was a practice that they used to go to court, and she used to have intercourse with her husband to show that she couldn't finish the job.
Disaster.
And the judge was there to see. So they had all these kinds of weird practice. Well, it's not very weird now, actually. This is something that's revived itself in different ways in the current time. But this is weird practices, of course, from a legal perspective is what I mean. And that's really the backdrop of the feminist movement, why it came about contextually. Any questions here?
Sorry, you mentioned Elizabeth Stanton and Millicent
Fawcett, yeah.
Well, these were the two who you said.
So they were racists.
They were the founders of First Wave.
So they were key figures in first wave feministic discourse. The other one, Stanton, that I've mentioned, the last one, she's the one who talked about lynching black people. She was the first senator in America. She was the one who said lynch, used the term lynch.
Okay, so who's the founder?
Yeah.
Because you're saying it's linked to racism.
Yes.
Could feminists say this is a one person, one opinion?
No, this is not one person, one opinion. This was a movement. Yeah, there's actually papers written on this. It's quite easy to find the papers written on this. It was a discourse that was actually cross-national. Like even in the UK you had the racists, in America you had different. It was surprisingly popular opinion to be racist as a feminist at that time. It was surprisingly popular opinion. I've given 3 names, but there are others we can give.
You said the first female senator. Is it Latimer Felton or the top one?
Stanton is the first senator. The last time I mentioned the slide. Interestingly, there's something called the Fawcett Society here in the UK. It's one of the major feminist societies named after this racist woman. Anyways, put that to the side. So we talked about suffrage. We talked about the countries. Now,
Now, all this tells me is that the people that are taught this are clueless, right? They don't actually know what they're following, right?
I've put something interesting here, which is some examples of legal analogical reasoning. So this is Rue versus Rue or something. It's called Rue versus Rue, and this is something that I saw that was seemed to be like a judgment, and this is why marriage of someone under 16 is seen as abhorrent at this time. I found it quite interesting. So according to modern thought, already is telling us what's going on. It is considered socially and morally wrong that persons of an age at which we now believe, so he's already telling us now, when was now? 20 years ago, literally, yeah? Or whatever it may have been. We now believe to be immature and provide for their education. So education's at the center. Remember, so now adulthood is connected to what? Education. If you haven't finished your GCSEs, you're not an adult somehow, right? That's the idea. They didn't have GCSEs then, but the idea is your adulthood and your maturity is connected to your education. And once again, education became a big thing because the liberal government wanted to develop the country. So we have to understand that that is their standard, okay? And it's very difficult to moralize on this basis because you can see clearly the historical development in this country and other countries where it started to be moralized that actually this was a decent age for marriage or intercourse, and this was not a decent age for marriage and intercourse. It's not really a biological or physiological thing, where they, say this is really pegged strongly on education or lack thereof.
So you're just saying that these three people, they contributed to the finding of first wave feminism.
Yes.
And they were racist.
Yes.
Is that what we're going on?
That's what we're saying right now. Yeah.
Yeah, and not just this, that, yeah, and then talking about age of consent, their basis for age of consent is actually you can only consent if you're educated. So it's like just legalese, right? It's manipulation to get the population to behave as you want, choice wise. Very interesting.
That's exactly right. Remember, first wave feminism isn't really the influential one, if you want to call it that, right? And that's why we're going to segue now into second wave feminism, okay? And this is where it really is interesting. It really, really is interesting because second wave feminism it happened in the 60s, okay? America and the UK, the civil rights movement. And this is where women obviously came out and said we want equal pay, talked about abortion, all these things, no problem, okay? But it's also when you had this drudgery, you had this almost disdainful, if you like, tone towards domesticity. And so a woman being in the home, in fact a mother, a mother became the subject of attack. All of the major, three main names that you need to know about second wave feminism in terms of academics. Number one is Simone de Beauvoir. The second one is Betty Friedan. And for the sake of argument, why not put Germaine Greer there as well? Yeah, Germaine Greer, who's still active, by the way. She's still about talking and stuff like that, and talking, being controversial. So these three women have published works. The two probably most notable works that you need to be aware of is Betty Friedan's Feminine Mystique, 1963, and Simone de Beauvoir's Second Sex. These are the two. It's like their Quran and Sunnah. Sorry to put it in that. It's like their main. You want to put it, their main academic, works. Sorry? Is that on the slide? I believe it is, yeah. The names are on the slide, yeah? If not, we'll yeah. Yeah, I think it will be on the second thing. So we wrote Feminine Mystique. And Feminine Mystique is where the famous line, the comfortable concentration, the home is a comfortable concentration camp. What was it, Ar-Rahman in the poem? Amilatun fi sijniha al-maqiti. So it's been translated. It's very, that she is a, prisoner in her house. By the way, she actually retracted this. Very interesting. In her book called Second Stage, which she wrote some 10 years after or something like this, she said this was a bit extreme for me to say that. People don't realize she made a hell of a lot of retractions. Why did she make retractions? I'll tell you why she made retractions. She made retractions because in the year 1970, she wrote a book.
Actually, the reason she made retractions is because she was actually doing it for attention. You go as extreme as possible, right? For attention. Once you have the attention, you don't need to be so extreme anymore, and so you take it back. It's a strategy. It's not what she actually believed. I get it.
Book called The Second Stage. You can get this book. And she realized by doing these kind of sociological investigations that women were actually having things worse. That things were getting worse for women. I'm going to read something from her book right now. She said that women are experiencing more signs of psychological stress than women in their 20s and 30s had in the 50s and early 60s, she admits. Listen to what she says. And were more likely to feel on edge of a nervous breakdown than young men, she said.
Lol.
So this is after what? After the Civil Rights Movement, after the
Frickin'
implementation
mess.
of Equal Rights Act, after women are going to work, after all of the discussion about feminism, after women were burning bras, after. So if she goes and checks to see if women are happy now because of what she's done, she realizes actually women are sadder, they're worse off. Their welfare has been affected in the negative.
Indeed.
She says that she admits this in her book, The Second Stage, which, by the way, you don't find in curricula. You don't find in syllabi, this book, Second Stage. You find Feminine Mystique. Even in GCSE and A-levels, they don't teach any kids about the second stage. It's a book she wrote. And in fact, it's a book she wrote after the book Feminine Mystique. But because it has all these admissions, these dirty admissions that she puts and she tells us the truth about, we want to hide this under the carpet, do we? Women 35 to 39, 1 in 3, she says in the same book, in the 1970s experienced a nervous breakdown, which is more than a 10% increase, which is in sociological terms quite heavy. So she realized, based on her own study, this is Betty Friedan we're talking about, that more women were suffering after the implementation of all of these things, and after they go into work, and after they've taken up all these attitudes towards domesticity, and the family and the home and the motherhood and all these things. You see. And she even admits, quite interestingly in the book, she goes, women have a profound human impulse to have children. Well, you weren't saying that before.
Indeed.
All the tone has changed now, hasn't it? When you see women are suffering and coming to you and crying in nervous breakdowns. Now you're saying, well, actually women have a profound instinct, she says, or impulse, sorry, to have children. Well, you weren't saying that before, Friedan. She realizes what she put women in. But is she the only one? You'll be surprised she's not the only one. In 1981, after realizing the troubling psychological impact of women, Friedan states this. Let me just go with Friedan for a second. She says, we had better find a change. But change is hard because listen to what she says. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable what she says. Listen to this. She goes, because women have almost a religious feeling about the women's movement. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Subhanallah. She says, we've got to change this now. This is 20 years after everything. She goes, because women now are becoming, it's like feminism has become religion. Who's saying that? Betty Friedan.
Oh my lord. Guys, didn't I say that? I said that. I've said that before on this very show. Not that I've ever read Betty Friedan's books, right? But that's, any person with eyes can observe that women treat womanism like a religion. It's replaced Christianity. Rollo Tomasi said the same.
Of feminism. She goes, I realize we have to make a change. She's saying this. I realize we have to make a change, but what? But it's difficult now because women have a what? A religious feeling towards feminism. Can you imagine this?
I can, in fact.
A reverence, an awe. This is what she continues. It keeps us from asking questions about what really matters to women now. So, you see, it's really negatively impacted women. She realizes that. She wants to change that, but she can't because she's already created a monster. She's already created the Frankenstein of feminism. She's already helped contribute to that. And now she's trying to pull women back. Actually, we're going too far. No, it's too far. The Frankenstein has already been created. And do you know who's suffering for it? Women are suffering more because of it.
Women.
And one of the most powerful things I've ever read from a feminist is from Germaine Greer in her book 1981, The Whole Woman. Remember, Germaine Greer was one of the founding mothers of feminism. See her online. How she's coming with arrogance and talking and smoking cigarette and this and that. And she's with confidence talking about how important it is and attacking domesticity, attacking this and equality and all that kind of. And then what? She comes in 1981, she goes, I mourn for my unborn babies. I mourn for my unborn babies, she says. This is two of your big names.
Lordy Lord.
The third one, which is the worst one, by the way. Where she said, I mourn for my unborn babies, she said. She goes, I still have pregnancy dreams. She's exposing herself. Waiting with vast...
My lord. That's extremely sad.
joy, something that will never happen. because she's over, she's past the age of pregnancy. Never happened. Allahu Akbar. It's a punishment for you, because you were telling all the women. It's like you're telling all the women that motherhood is X, Y, Z, and all that. Now you'll be punished because
Indeed.
you realize that actually you suppressed your instinct and you hurt yourself. You only hurt you. You're playing with fire. You played with fire and you got burnt. De Beauvoir, who is if you wanna put the main woman of feminism in the second wave is De Beauvoir, the second sex, because it had been probably the most robust and thorough philosophical work that had been done on feminism, and up until the third wave, it was the main way in which scholars of feminism would argue for feminism. Okay, this is what she says. We know her thought, right? She attacks the institution of motherhood. She attacks domesticity. She talks about, you know, how it's oppressive to be a man, biologically even, and these things. But she says the following. She was talking about, she had a boyfriend. His name was Sartre, Jean-Paul Sartre, a huge philosopher.
Sartre.
Imagine now, she's telling women not to have what? Husbands or this. She's telling them not to have husbands, yeah? Not to be married, not to have kids. But listen to what she says about her own boyfriend. Listen to what she said. She goes, I felt dominated by someone else intellectually. Sartre lived up to the man I had dreamt up until 15. I was simply not in his class. Wallahi, I have not seen one single Muslim woman to ever say that. With the most complementarian lifestyle. She's an egalitarian. She said, I've never heard anything. I was dominated by my husband. I was not even in his class. The most traditionalist woman, the Amish. I've never said, this is what? So you're telling women not to have kids. You're telling women not to, she's like the devil. Wallahi, she is like shaitan. Sorry, let me just go into religious discourse for that. مثله كمثل الشيطان إذ قال الإنسان اكفر فلما كفر قال أنا بريء منك. It's like this in the Quran. It says it's like him, like the devil. He says go and do disbelief, and when he does it, he says I have got nothing to do with you. In her own life, what's she doing? She's saying you're my superior. I'm not even in your class. But she's writing in her books as what? Don't get married. Don't have children. Don't allow this from.
Yeah, you can't make this crap up. She's basically just an influencer, right? Like in 2024, they speak with out of one side of their mouth, and out of the other side they do the opposite, right? Anything to get money, anything to get attention. It doesn't actually believe it though.
The man is like this nonsense hypocrite. She's a nonsense hypocrite.
That's what they were statement. You're a feminist until you get married.
Well, she wasn't even married. We'll come on to it. She wishes she was, as she even admits. Well, not this, but she goes, I was simply not in his class. She looked in the mirror. Just like you, Ali Dawa, she said something that you said. She said, I detest my own reflection.
Oh my. That was mean.
She goes, if at least my own thought had given birth to a hill, a rocket, but nothing has taken place. I'm astonished to realize how thoroughly I have been cheated. Cheated by who? Who are you talking about? You cheated by yourself. You cheated yourself. Yeah? She's writing her autobiography. She thought we didn't read. Then she also admits, I don't know, she thinks it's a diary entry. She writes the following. She goes, before her boyfriend, Sartre, came from Paris, she goes, she was preparing her new independent home in Paris and waiting for the return of Sartre from Paris. New furniture is brought, the walls are papered, and new clothes are purchased. Oh, you're trying to make an effort for him, are you? You're trying to make an effort for him, are you? But you tell the woman to what? Not to get married. But you wish you were married. You wish you had that commitment. He called her, one time he said to her, because, you know, she came back home, she wasn't there, she said, you're like a mere housewife. And obviously in their understanding, this is a huge embarrassment. She says, I was furious with myself to have disappointed him in this way. And you know, he's the one, by the way, if you look at her autobiography, who
she sees him as an alpha male. It's so obvious, right? It's like if you know anything about anything, you like the RP, she sees him as that man. And notice, she can be the strongest womanist, even the inventor of womanism, and still she'll submit.
Persuaded her. He's the one who persuaded her to write The Second Sex. So we have a valid question here. Was second wave feminism created by Sartre, by a man? Was he the one doing all the work? Was he the one pushing her to do these things? Why? Because it's in the benefit, we're going to come to realize, it's in the benefit of a man.
Yes.
This is what women don't understand. Please, some women do, of course, but some women don't. Feminist women.
So here's why. Men get to, oh my god, is Sartre really that much of a genius? That he manipulated his girl into creating womanism so that he could be, or so that men in the future could have harems? Is that really? No freaking way. That's crazy. That's like next levels of manipulation.
That feminism, second wave, benefits the man psychologically, as we'll find, more than it benefits the woman. He doesn't need to commit. He doesn't need to have kids. He doesn't need to do all those things. He can move from one woman to another, use and abuse, lash and dash. He can. This is the situation. But let's not mention that. What we should mention is some sociological investigations, and the biggest one that's ever been done that I know of is this one that is mentioned. It's mentioned in the poem as well. Do you remember what the lines were? Yeah, this is the دراسة الغربية that's been through. في مئة ألف, yeah? This is the مئة ألف. It's Blanche, Flower and Oswald. This is the name of the study, 2000, okay? 100,000 participants. It's a longitudinal study from the years 1970 to the years 1990 in the UK and the US. Huge study. Very difficult to replicate. And this is what the researchers said, that men are happier and women are sadder. In the time period after the feminist movement has taken its force, and after all the laws have been placed, and after the attitudes have changed, and after women now going to work, why are they happier and sadder? Well, because let me tell you why. Because they say legislative reform and so on has not been successful in either country, in either country, in creating or raising the well-being among women. The quote is messed up a little bit on the slides, but that's, you see. This big thing is saying what? In fact, the same study said, do you know who was getting happier? Men were getting happier. They're getting what they want. The commitment issues have gone down. He doesn't have to extract his resources for her. He's got more money now. He can just use her, move from woman to woman. She's the one she wants security. She's the one psychologically primed for these things. You want to play this game with a man? And you think...
Right. Yeah. Who is favored? Alpha men. Or not alpha men. Men that do what's happening in the black community in 2024, right? Where the girls don't choose the stable good man. They choose the guy that, as he said, slashes and dashes. The guy doesn't give two craps about her, right? And then has a kid by him, and then leaves, and then has 15 more. Zero commitment, zero requirements from him.
Think you're going to be happier. You don't know what you're doing. You've created 20 years longitudinal study. It tells us that in fact the welfare of women has degenerated considerably or exponentially as a result of what? As a result, or after at least these policies had been implemented. Now, why is this the case, or what should we think about? I mean, feminists know, even the second wave feminists, that there are differences, considerable physiological and psychological and even biological, as we know, differences between men and women. But basically their argument is, despite all of these differences, that we should be treated the same. Now, the burden of proof is upon the one who's making the claim. Why do we need to be on the back foot? If someone asks you, why is it different for whatever ruling it is in Islam, or whatever other system even, that differentiates between ruling of men and women, so why is it different? Why should it be the same, in fact? Plato, he made a very interesting quote, Aristotle quotes him. He says, treat like cases as like, meaning identical things should be treated identically. And different things, by extension, should be treated what? Differently. Now, your feminism doesn't accommodate for the differences between men and women. That's a failure. That means it has less explanatory scope. Now, why should we cover for their failure, or even accept it as a presupposition for answering their questions? They're asking, why is it that, we'll come to it, but why is the inheritance different? Why is polygamy? Why is man can marry this and that? Why should it be the same, in fact?
Why should it be the same?
An assumption of equality, of absolute equality.
That's right. Agreed. Why is there the presumption of this? Good point.
The assumption itself is unsubstantiated, and in fact, they need to argue it from first principles. They need to argue why it should be different things should be treated the same. They need to argue that, not us. And in fact, this is one of the key reasons, and very important here, why ridda happens, why apostasy happens, or why shak happens, why raib happens in a deen, or doubt. And we, because we've been in the back foot for too long, have not been able to answer this properly. The way we answer it is, sorry, is the assumption that different things should be treated the same. We believe that identicality and value
is the assumption that different things should be treated the same. Why should different things be treated the same?
Value does not
Agreed.
mean. So equality in value does not mean identicality in roles. One more time. Equality of value. We do believe men and women are equal in value. Yeah, in spiritual value they are equal. Equality of value is not equivalent to identicality in roles. This is an extremely important sentence. Memorize it. If they want to tell us that it should be the case, they have to argue for it. It's not me that has to argue for it. But you know what? Sometimes it's quite easy and it's quite straightforward if we point to them the differences between men and women. Because some of them are actually ignorant of it, even though the feminist founding fathers were not ignorant of it. In the chapter biology, de Beauvoir, she goes, women are weaker than men. She will lose to them in the fight. She has less control of herself. I'm paraphrasing, but that's the idea. She says all this thing. But sometimes you have to show them that is a fact. Let's give some examples of that. So these are 3 studies I'm giving you, right? There's one of sexual differences, hormonal differences, and cognitive differences. Cognitive, the way you think, right? So let's start with the sexual differences. Roy Baumeister and Kathleen Cantonese, yeah? This is a study of 2001.
All right. Shout-outs to... one second. I'm just going to go out and find the guy that suggested...
Have you ever...
The guy that suggested that I look at these videos, because I'm having a great time. So let me see, where was it? Visuals are distracted. Here. OK75. Shoutouts to you. Because I'm enjoying this so much, I'm going to cover the second half of this video right now. This is great. We're going to do more by this guy, because I'm really enjoying these videos here. All right. I'm going to end the video there. Hit the like, hit the sub, hit all for notifications. Buy my books like Hunter M, Adrian R, Tom and Bobby, Dylan, Renaissance Press, Brian, Andrew, Alan, Armani, and Nicholas. Shoutouts to you, most recent purchaser of both my books, Strategist Guide to Seduction and Quotes to Live By. Thank you. They can be found at bit.ly/heliosbooks. If you want coaching, just message me at my email. That's theheliosblog@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening, guys, especially if you listen to the end. I really do appreciate it. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.